I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, has the Auditor General's criticism of the ArriveCan app affected your view of how the federal government handles expenses?
Something has gone wrong somewhere, or somebody has not been paying attention.
Awful. Where'd the money go?
Sounds like election year hype to me. Just another target for the other side of the house.
There's not a lot of good management that goes on with tax dollars.
Canada's Auditor General Karen Hogan did not mince words when criticizing the federal government's ArriveCan app. She said there was a glaring disregard in basic management practices and one of the worst examples of financial record keeping she has ever seen. When the ArriveCan app was conceived, the initial cost was somewhere around the neighborhood of $80,000. But then, with endless technical glitches, the cost ballooned up to $60 million of taxpayer money, and that cost could even go higher. So, how do you feel about how the money was managed? Our question. Has the Auditor General's criticism of the ArriveCan app affected your view of how the federal government handles expenses?
I mean, I would say that you would expect the federal government to know how to budget and know how to, know how to invest in their money, and especially when a lot of Canadians are going through a lot of food insecurity and not being able to pay their rents. You would think that they would use that money in a different way, and I feel like it was completely useless. I mean, I've used it a couple of times while traveling, and it's just a mess, and it's unfortunate.
I would say so. I mean, personally, I haven't really used the ArriveCan app in quite some time, so I don't think it's that quite relevant to the general public that much anymore. So I think it's a bit overboard for how much it's being used currently.
I'd agree with that, but also considering COVID was a first-time thing, it makes sense to spend a little bit extra to make sure everyone's safe.
You know, government's not a business, so they don't tend to manage money in the same way the private sector does. There are a lot of inefficiencies, and I think the storyline just contributed to what I suspected already, which was that there's not a lot of good management that goes on with tax dollars.
Yeah, I would say so. When it was that extreme of a difference between what we expected for it to cost and what it actually cost in the end, that's disturbing.
You said you had the app on your phone. How did you find it?
It was all right. I mean, I had to do it twice because the first time it just disappeared when I was coming over from the States. So it had some glitches, but in the end I got back, which was the point of it. So yeah, it was good.
I don't think it's any surprise how federal government handles expenses since Trudeau's got in there. We've had nothing surprises me. There's a lot more than $80 million missing. The infrastructure money is that Catherine McKenna just walked away from. We've never heard anything about that. So nothing surprises me with this government, and there's a lot more money missing than that.
Yeah, absolutely it has. It's pretty irresponsible. Nobody even can really say who's responsible for these funds. So it's pretty discouraging, I would say, if I could use one word to describe it. Yeah.
Very much so, actually. It's a very good point to make, because from the news that I was reading, they say that they can't actually tell what the complete cost of that Arrive Canada app is, which is disgraceful. I think the federal government thinks that the Canadian taxpayer has an unlimited resources of finances to pay into Canada, which we do not. We have enough obstacles in the way as it is, with things getting more expensive all of the time. So, yes, that's a very valid point to bring up.
Wow, that's a huge discrepancy. To project one thing and go many, many times over, that's wild. And wow, awful. Where'd the money go?
Really disappointed because I used the ArriveCan app. My husband and I did it, and we thought it worked really well. But if we knew that it was that much over cost, I don't know if we would have enjoyed it as much as we did. And I just think it's sad that there's a lot of hidden costs that we're only finding out about afterwards.
Considering what was going on during those years when they launched ArriveCan, i.e. COVID, it's a bit ridiculous to zero in on a $60 million investment on a dumb app, which was really a rounding error. Sounds like election year hype to me, just another target for the other side of the house.
Yeah, I think, if you're the Auditor General, you could probably, brush up on your decimal placement, but it was during COVID, a lot of crazy stuff was happening. Maybe somebody threw a decimal in the wrong place. Either way, that's years ago, 60 million, 80,000. What is it now? It's gone.
Yeah, as someone who was involved with app development in the past, I know that there's no way an app that simple should cost that much. I just deleted it from my phone yesterday. I think maybe I used it a couple of times because I had to. That's definitely disappointing.
Not in particular. I know that cost overruns can come to be expected, but the auditing of of any project, no matter what it is, including the ArriveCan app, is important. So finding out where the issues came from and why they weren't resolved in process is more important to me than how it actually ended up being there in the final total.
Well, it's brought into question on how things are actually being spent and how effectively they're using the taxpayers' money. Certainly should be reviewed. There's a large discrepancy there that we've all found out about. So I think it's good that it's being investigated.
Yes, I would say something has gone wrong somewhere, or somebody has not been paying attention.
Not really. Basically, there's overspending everywhere. Any large organizations, doesn't matter if it's corporate or federal or provincial, they always under budget and overspend. Or not always, but a lot of times.
For Canada's Prime Minister, an official residence is an important element for Canadians, especially to have an appropriate place to host foreign dignitaries. 24 Sussex Drive has been the home to many prime ministers since Louis Saint Laurent first moved in there around 1950, but has been in disrepair for decades and will cost north of $30 million to bring it back up to speed. Even Rideau Cottage, located on the grounds of Rideau Hall and the home of Justin Trudeau since he took office as Prime Minister, could be costly if converted into an official Prime Minister's residence. So, would erecting brand new living quarters be the answer? We took this question to Canadians.
Should Canada invest in a new official residence for the Prime Minister?
There's a lot of history to the present residence, and if it can be salvaged and renewed, I think that would be wonderful. It's kind of an iconic residence and symbolic of a lot of good things in Canada, so I would be in favor of refurbishing it if that's a possibility.
Immediately. I think if elections get called today, Pierre Poilievre will easily win. Yeah, that's what I think.
That's a hard question. I really don't know. It's been ignored and neglected for such a long time. It'd be nice to be able to keep it for its historic value, but it's going to cost a lot to renovate it. It might be more efficient to simply start again.
Yes, I think they should. This is the Prime Minister's office. I would say the office has not been held by quality people for some time, but it's still important to have a new official residence. And even if it costs $100 million, it's a rounding error for Ottawa.
Yes, of some sort or another. I think that's another disgrace. I have a long list of disgraces of what's going on here. Yes, I think that's only fitting. Does any other head of state have to live with a bunch of cockroaches and whatever is in there? No. It's this business of always appearing to save money, and then things fall apart. Yes, she needs some kind of residence, a proper residence. And it's up to somebody else to worry about what to do about it. But really, it's just ridiculous.
I don't know how bad of a state it is, and they talk about it all the time. It's been there for your renovations aren't cheap. I know, I've done them. But if the house is in bad shape, maybe. But that's up to someone else. That's not up to the Prime Minister to decide. I think it's up to someone who can actually give a fair opinion. And not a consulting firm like he always likes to go to, because that'll just cost us billions of dollars for nothing.
No, absolutely not. No.
We can't be going around throwing money in that direction when we could be using it in other places where people really need it. That's just cosmetic. You know, we all live with that. I wish I could do all the repairs in my house every 5 years, but we can't. So that's a big no for me.
To me, it would be just the finances of it. If you can build something suitable rather than spending all the money on trying to restore a building that's not restorable, that would be the way to go. Just a kind of a pragmatic approach to it.
I don't think it's necessary for Canada to invest in a new residence for the new Prime Minister. I think that, I don't know what situation he's in personally, but I am sure that he can pay for his own residence. There's no reason why taxpayer money should go towards that, and I'm fairly certain that's where it would be coming from. So definitely no on my end. Yeah.
Official residence, like for him to live, for the Prime Minister of Canada to live, having the government invest in that? No, I don't think that's money we need to be spending that way.
No. I feel like they already have a lot of things they're investing in, especially like useless stuff like that. I don't know if it's useless. I think maybe it is. There's more stuff that we can probably invest in, like the city or just Canada in general, or like about the homeless people on the street and everything. They could build a shelter for them instead.
I think definitely down the road. I think right now there's a lot of other things that need our attention right now in our world, but I think it's a historic monument that has been used by many prime ministers in the past. So I think if it's in talks, in consideration of getting remodeled and refurnished and everything, I think maybe that's something that we should consider, but not as a primary. It's not a priority right now.
That's a tough question. I work in the environment, so I tend to want to repair what we have as opposed to tearing it down and creating new space. I know there are a lot of problems in the current residence, but I think historically I'd like to see that invested in rather than actually building something new that isn't in keeping with the historical tradition.
A lot of money though.
It is a lot of money. But the leader of the country's got to have somewhere to live that is, I think, in keeping with the trappings of office.
No.
Why?
They should fix the old one up.
Why do you say that?
It's a heritage building. It's been there for 75, 80 years. They have to fix that one. And that is 24 Sussex. It's prime property.
No.
Why?
Because they are millionaires and they can rent whatever they is. They have to invest in the homeless people instead.
I would say yes, considering that the current one has sat unused for how many years and needs how many millions of dollars worth of renovations, so yes. I would like to see it kept as a heritage building because it is important, but if no one's going to live there, then it's not really serving its purpose.
Which of the following is made up of a majority of women for the first time in Canadian history? Supreme Court of Canada, Senate, or the Canadian Parliament? So Supreme Court, Senate, or Parliament?
Parliament?
Canadian Parliament.
Oh my goodness. Senate?
Supreme Court of Canada.
Supreme Court. Canadian Parliament.
Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Supreme Court.
It's Supreme Court. High fives, let's go.
Yay.
Low fives.
There you go.
The Supreme Court of Canada is Canada's final court of appeal. For the first time in Canadian history, of the 9 justices of the Supreme Court, the majority of them are now women. After being appointed in November 2023, Justice Mary Morrow was officially welcomed to Canada's highest court on February 19, 2024, tipping the balance of Supreme Court justices to 5 women and 4 men. It is recognized as a groundbreaking event in Canadian history, echoing the Honourable Bertha Wilson being the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada back in 1982.
Allegations of Chinese police stations operating in Canada, the alleged involvement of the Indian government in the assassination of a Sikh leader in British Columbia, and the Conservative Party's assertion that the Iranian government is operating within Canada has brought into question the amount of nefarious foreign activity happening on Canadian soil. This has been a big cause for concern in this country, and some fear we're not taking it seriously enough. So what do you think? Our question.
Is the federal government naive about foreign government activity on Canadian soil?
I think all governments should kind of keep each other accountable. So like here, governments in North America, we should be trying to, like the governments in China, we should be keeping them in check. I think it should be everyone making sure everyone else is doing what they should be doing and not doing what they shouldn't.
There's probably some degree of governments being naive in the sense that they are pretty certain that they have the edge on China. But once you see what's going on in there, you realize that China is far more advanced than anywhere else. Therefore, I don't think that the governments really understand China that well.
I think all nations need to be worried about that. I mean, the United States has the CIA and a lot of these other black op organizations, and it's just another branch of something like that where you need to be able to police the people that are here and not have a foreign entity policing those people.
It's just, I feel like you should be very aware of what foreign governments are doing in your own country. It's like, just look at the States and the influence that Russia supposedly had on elections and whatever else. Like, if you're not doing the things for the people of your country, what are you doing?
I think most governments are. I think sovereignty dictates that we turn a blind eye to it. We like to think we're masters of our own destiny. And so I think most governments struggle with the fact that there are things going on that they're blissfully unaware of. And I think our government's no exception to that.
I think we're too nice. We're naive.
Okay. Why do you say that?
There's too much stuff going on. Like, that should have been checked a long time ago. So, yeah, we're too naive.
I don't think they're that misinformed. I think they have their ears open and eyes, and they have people researching things. So I think it's okay.
Depends on the country. I think that in the West in general, there's a lot of retroactive fear of Russia as our main enemy, and I think it's taking some time to realize that politically it's more China as our main threat in terms of influence. And I think that there are a lot of foreign actors who seek to, have a lot of influence on Canadian soil, and it's there's a lot of multi-pronged threats, but I don't think I think they can be exaggerated in the wrong ways a lot of the time.
Well, I think the politicians perhaps are a little naive, but certainly some of the MPs that have been affected are not. My concern about the foreign inquiry is there's a lot of U.S. influence and activity going on in this country, and we don't seem to care. We're quite happy to be a colony of the U.S.
Quite possibly. I think they've maybe been a little slow on the pickup with just how advanced all kinds of technology is and that kind of thing. So I think they are a little naive and a little too trusting, and that's nice up to a point, but not to the point where you're taken advantage of and you don't know really what the true situation is. So I think they need to be a lot more on the ball on that. And that being said, Trudeau did make the statement about the Indian interference with the assassination here, and it was of course mocked that he was ridiculous, whereas now other countries are saying the same thing. So I think they have a mixed record there, but they really need to pick up the slack on it for sure.
We have people in those positions that look after our well-being. I'm sure they have the answers. And if it was something that we had to be really concerned with, they would have taken care of it already, and we would have found about it. Government is going to hide things like that, I'm sure. I hope not.
I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that that's going on, mainly perpetrated by the Chinese, but probably also Russia as well. And who knows who else. So yeah, I think the feds are naive about it.
They might be a little bit, but I actually don't think they are, because I think they are getting certain intelligence that we all don't have. So I hope their information is better than mine.
Yeah, I don't know if they're naive or they're having to be circumspect about what they share in the public venue. So I suspect it's the latter. And for security reasons, I can understand that that's not something they're able to really be altogether transparent about.
It's really hard to comment on that as an outsider because I am not privy to what CSIS would be doing and what the agencies that are responsible for that are doing. I think with the move to a public inquiry, some of those questions will be answered, but at this point it's really hard to make a judgment on it. We are living in a world that has shifted and changed so much in terms of social media and disinformation and so on that I think probably some of that has caught all governments off guard. And yeah, that's an excellent question. But I don't have the clarity at this point to be able to say yes or no.
Canada's Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault raised some eyebrows recently when he said his government was finished investing in large-scale road projects. He also said that Canada's road network was perfectly adequate. This has prompted widespread criticism from provincial premiers and municipal leaders from across the country. But the Prime Minister says his government's policy on contributing to infrastructure remains unchanged. So we took this question to Canadians.
How do you feel about the federal government's decision to not invest in large-scale road projects?
Honestly, I think that infrastructure in general has been lacking in terms of investment with all governments for the past 50 years or so. So I think that, rail, roads, they all need to be renovated and rebuilt a lot of the time. So it's unfortunate to hear that not a lot of money is going to that when it should be.
Well, looking out on these roads, they're a disaster in Ottawa. And the trucker protest did not help with the trucks going around and round and round and round. I live in Quebec, so the bridge got destroyed because they were doing this loop. So I'm very disappointed with that line of thinking because we need help.
I don't know. I think moving towards something that's a little greener away from big roads is important, but until we have the capacity to do that, like Canada's a really big country. We need a lot of transport. We need highways, things like that. We need to invest in things like that. So that makes sense.
I agree with that. I think there's definitely talks about a greener country, but there's a lot of people up north that need those roads, and there's a lot of people who don't have the support that we have the ability being in an urban environment. So I think roads are important, and they should also be kind of a priority for people and communities up north that need food and resources that we have easily access to.
I think in a country this large, with the population base that we have, I don't know how you avoid large-scale transportation infrastructure. It's just, from the day we built the railroad from coast to coast, that's what we're about, that's what we need. I don't know, for me, there's a lot of infrastructure questions right now with the electrification of transport. So are you going to avoid that as well? Are you not going to be able to get to net zero because you can't put the money into the infrastructure that we need to electrify? So I think it's a complicated issue, and I wouldn't want to see us backing away from it because I'm a firm believer that we can take that low-carbon electricity and put it to good use in transportation.
I kind of think it's a good idea to invest in the large-scale road projects just because it helps with more travel. It's probably more efficient for transportation for goods and services.
I think these are knee-jerk reactions. They're not really planned. I'm actually from Alberta, and I am not conservative. I don't really buy into a lot of the politics, but I do understand when knee-jerk reactions are made by the feds in Ottawa, not accounting for the impact on different communities across the country, then yeah, certainly I'm concerned about that. But I get what they're doing is just, it's not very thoughtful as it should be.
I think that's an environmental issue that they want to be on one side of an environmental issue. We obviously are going to still need roads, especially as more and more new Canadians come. They're going to be driving vehicles. So I think that they need to be more clear about exactly what they mean. The ministers seem to be kind of right and left, like on both sides of that issue. So I think that's just confusion that they need to clear up because roads aren't going away anytime soon.
Well, Canada is such a vast place. It's such a stupid strategy to have. You have to spend so much money in travelling from point to point, and if you're working You know, from province to province throughout Canada, the last thing that you need is that extra wear and tear and expense and damage to your vehicles because of road conditions. I think here in Sask we know, you know, just as well as any other province by the number of potholes and how quickly our roads fall apart because they're not built properly in the first place. So again, it's not a big win for the federal government to have that kind of attitude, I don't think.
I can see where they're going because wanting to change how we think about travel. I would really like rails to be expanded and a lot more public rail via rail, but not cost prohibitive, and a lot more tracks. Like, I think it's crazy we don't have rail service from Regina to Saskatoon. And I think the reality is we have to maintain what we have, but I would rather see them put it into more public transportation and upgrading that.
I feel okay with it. I think, you know, it seems like we have all the highways we need for now. I don't see that as a priority coming from the federal government right now. I heard it said that we may need to walk between Sussex and Moncton and that it would take 17 hours, and that's hilarious to me. And I do think that there's some provincial responsibility for road development. So I'm not too worried about that. I don't think it's a priority for New Brunswick.
Personally, I think we really should focus on our existing infrastructure to maintain what we have. But certainly, we can't hide from growth and need, and wherever there's need for roadways for safe passage, that should be looked at.
I think that's a rather poor idea. Right now, we've got an aging infrastructure all across Canada, whether it be bridges, roads, sewer systems across Canada. We need to invest deeply to make sure that our infrastructure is going to be going well for the next generation. Because let's face it, we're to the point now where our infrastructure is starting to come down in various aspects.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.